Hello, good morning, and welcome to the third event in the Aura Innovation Masterclass Series 2022. It's great to have you with us this morning. For anyone who's unfamiliar with my voice, you are listening to Tom Kerr of Aura. So in the first presentation of the series, going back a couple of weeks now, we heard from Williams Advanced Engineering. In the second presentation, we explored the question, what makes a great leader in the innovation space, with Val Pastrano of Mondelez. And now we are going to be listening to a discussion on overcoming barriers, how to onboard stakeholders to drive innovation, and how to join the cross-functional practical dots to make innovation happen. Our guests this morning are Ben Diamant, Head of Product at Ooni Pizza Ovens, and Hannah Rogers of Blue Yonder Research, who are the sponsors of this Innovation Masterclass series. So I'm still going to hand you over to Hannah, because time is of the essence, to formally introduce Ben. But before I do that, let me remind you to put your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Please do that. We almost missed a question on Tuesday because someone put a question into the chat box, which we are policing, but we almost missed it. So please put questions into the Q&A box. We should get to the questions at around 10:50 a.m. So I'm now going to hand you over to Hannah, who will formally introduce Ben and launch into the conversation. Hannah, over to you.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you all so much for being here. I can see more people joining as we go. So I'm going to hit play. But as Tom mentioned, if you've got any questions, do let us know. If you have any technical issues, please do get in touch via chat and someone will jump on that straight away. So fingers crossed this will work. And let me know if not. So thank you so much for having us today, Ben. Genuinely excited to be here in your beautiful Ooni kitchen. It's an absolute stunning place. I feel like we're on Saturday Kitchen or something like that. So we are in the outskirts of Edinburgh. Absolutely beautiful, and thank you for making us feel so welcome here. Very excited to be speaking to you today, and obviously I know we've known each other a long time over several different companies and worked together a lot. So I'm delighted that you're going to be sharing your wisdom with the world. And today we're really going to focus on barriers to innovation, what they are, and in particular, obviously, how to overcome them. So a very practical series of really hardcore, real-world tips that's going to help an audience, whether they're in airports, whether it's service, whether it's consumer goods, tips that they can learn to innovate within their own business and how they can overcome their own barriers as well. So thank you. So first off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience in innovation?
So hi, I'm Ben Diamant. I'm Head of Product Management for Special Projects Group here at Ooni Pizza Ovens. My background as an inventor and innovator, I worked for Unilever and then with Tommy Tippy with Maybon Group before doing my own consultant work and then joining Ooni. I invent and create new products and new businesses, and I have a passion for innovation. I've delivered lots of products to market, some big, some small, some really innovative ones as well, and I've built teams behind them as well.
And very much globally as well, because this isn't just UK for you, you've done this all over the world, haven't you?
Yeah, so I've been really lucky. I've done innovation in Asia, in America, and obviously in Europe as well. And almost all the products and teams we've built have been global. We've worked remotely with different agencies and partners, with teams across the globe to make things happen. And it's always been about building the right relationships with the right people to bring that innovation to life. That's the really exciting thing, I think.
And obviously, I know you very well, so I know how passionate you are about invention and innovation. Just describe that to people to say, what is it that makes you passionate about this world?
So I love making the world a better place. The reason I get up in the morning is I want to make a difference. I want to make people happier. I want to make better products that are more sustainable and more exciting. And that's what drives me. It's why I chose engineering and design as a career. It's why I'm interested in innovation as a process. And it's what drives me to kind of help other people on that kind of journey. And for me, there's like three things that are critical to innovation, the bit that I really enjoy. One is empathizing and understanding the consumer. So what makes her tick? What's different about her, particularly when it's a type of consumer who's got no relationship with my own life experiences. How do we want to talk to her? What's the brand? Then there's the technical solution, the engineering. I'm a geek. I love technology and I love finding really clever solutions to problems. How do you make it look beautiful? How do you get the science to work? How does it function? What's your solution and the benefit to her need? And then the third thing is the business model. So who are the partners and people you need to make it happen? how much does it cost, who can make it, how much are you going to sell it for? And those three things interrelate. You might have a great insight that you sold with a really cool piece of technology that's really expensive and will take you years to make. Or you might find something that's really cheap, which is off the shelf, which doesn't give you such a great benefit, but means you can hit more consumers faster and quicker. And that lovely triangle, those three balls, that early stage innovation, but that juggling is what I love, and the art of innovation is making those three things happen.
Obviously you're here at Ooni, which is wonderful. So tell us about Ooni.
So Ooni's wonderful. Like, Ooni is just such a special company. Ooni Pizza Ovens was founded by Christian and Darina 10 years ago. So Christian grew up in Finland. He loves baking, and he wanted to bake pizzas with his kids, and they were living in London in rented accommodation, and the oven in the house just doesn't get hot enough. It can't be hot enough to get to cook pizzas. But because it's a rented accommodation, he couldn't build a expensive stone-baked pizza oven, which would be the traditional solution. So like a classic lead user, he invented what is now the amazing range of Ooni ovens and built this business from that insight. We're now headquartered in Edinburgh, which is where Darina's from. We have an amazing, creative, talented and passionate team. We are growing exponentially. We have this incredible range of ovens, groceries and accessories. And our mission, our passion is make pizza. We want everyone to enjoy the coming together, the experience of making, of partaking in pizza or pizza parties, of cooking pizzas, of tasting pizzas, of enjoying the experience and the whole community that comes with that as well. And it really is a wonderful, wonderful company to be part of. I'm really, really happy at it. So
I think it's quite interesting as well, because it's so important to remember this is something that started 10 years ago in someone's house, and now it's a global business, and you are the market leaders in your area, which is just an incredible success story.
It really is, and you know, Christian and the team were part of the Financial Times Fast Track. Like they had been recognised by Wired and CNET and all sorts of press as well. And today, I think yesterday, we were featured as part of the Apple iPhone launch as well, which is incredible. And it's all down to Christian and Darina's culture, the way they treat people, their passion for innovation, the way they built their teams, the people they picked to join their business. It's 100% down to them, I believe, and obviously the team that they've built up around them.
And this term innovation, I know we're discussing this in the campaign for innovation, but for you then, what does innovation actually mean?
So for me, innovation is making the world a better place, and I think I'm a product innovator. I create physical things. I'm an inventor. I want to make it a service or a product that is tangibly different. The same is true for other people in terms of marketing, or sales, or supply chain. It's exactly the same. It's improving the way we deliver great things and improve people's lives. If we're not doing that, we're not making the world more sustainable, we're not making people happier, we're not taking the species on a journey. So the first question whenever you have a product or project is it innovative? Does it make the world better? Is it going to help people? If it doesn't, for me, I'm interested. If it does, then how can we make that bigger? How can we get it to more people? How can we make it more efficient? That kind of stuff.
So tell us about innovation at Ooni then, and what it means here.
So innovation is one of our core values, along with ambition, rigour, kindness and passion. It's the reason we've grown our business, and it's not just our product innovation in the amazing ovens and pills and things that we make. It's also innovation in how we've gone to market, how we've communicated, how we've built up a community, how we've worked with suppliers. Without it, we would not be here, full stop, but also we wouldn't have grown at the rate we've been able to grow. And without it, we will not continue to grow as we get good competitors coming along, as the market changes, as we have more people cooking pizza. It's a critical part of who we are, and we live and breathe it. And hopefully we'll show you around and see some of the kind of the way we do it here.
Think about innovation, particularly innovation pipelines, and as mentioned before, your expertise is actually making it happen. It's not just thinking about it, it's making sure it gets to market as a commercial impact, a real world impact to lives as well. So for people watching today, again, absolutely cross-sector, service, FMCG and far beyond, what do people need to think about in advance when they're developing innovation pipelines?
So I think the first thing is your consumer. Everything starts with the consumer. If you haven't spoken to your consumer this week or today, then you're not doing your job right. Have you read their blogs? Have you met them? Have you met them people who are very different to you, who wash up or who don't fly business class or who live in a shanty, whatever it is. Have you met that consumer? Do you understand and empathise with who they are? And therefore, do you know why you're making that innovation, why you're building your pipeline? Number one. Number two is what your competitors are up to. Have you tried your competitor products? Have you eaten them? Have you stayed at their hotels? Do you know how much they charge? Have you filled in their forms? If you haven't used your competitor products, you're not doing your job right. With those two things in mind, you now have a much better understanding of what the current landscape is, and you can start ideating and creating great new solutions to those problems, the technology solution. But without those, you can't start. So those are the first two things. The second one is, second sort of set is, how do you manage your innovation? So what does your pipeline look like? Do you have the high-level, disruptive, exciting innovations, the risky ones that might take longer, they might not make it to market, but can make a massive, massive difference? That's the stuff I get really excited about. Do you have your new variants, the incremental changes, the brand updates, the new noise, the really easy to do stuff that your business knows how to do day in, day out? And do you have a spectrum and a balance between those two? Are you taking enough risks as a business? If everything you deliver, if you deliver everything on time in full every single year, then you're probably not doing great innovation, and you're not taking enough risk as a business, and you're not accelerating it. And if you're not doing it, your competitors will be, and they will take your business away. Absolutely. So they're probably the biggest things: the consumer, your competitors, and then that kind of portfolio. And I know later on we'll talk about team and people and how you kind of make that happen as well.
But share with us now some of the challenges that you have faced, and obviously the companies that you work for are incredible. So just tell us what you can about the challenges you face there, getting actual innovation off the ground.
So let's probably just start by saying innovation is bloody hard. Like, if it was easy, we wouldn't all be having these conversations. And every business I've spoken to, both doing consultancy and obviously working for them, have had exactly the same questions and challenges. That's why we're here having this network. Some businesses do parts of the innovation process really well, and some have major gaps. You might have a brilliant stage gate process, which is really good for your new variant. It's bloody awful for anything disruptive. So I have personally found it really bloody hard to do innovation. Real step change innovation is really difficult, and you get barriers at every single stage, whether it's paying for something, getting permission to use it, finding team members, getting through stage gates. The more different an idea is, so Eric Ryan, who founded Method, said, the more different an idea is, the easier it is to get trampled down into the dirt. So clearly as innovators, we're trying to offer new ideas. It's really easy to kill it. So it's probably easier to illustrate this as an example. We were working with Tommy Tippy brand, which is like a market leader in baby care, and we wanted to relaunch their breastfeeding portfolio. And breastfeeding is a really sensitive subject for women after they've had a baby. How do they kind of breastfeed, and how do they get their own life back and feel like themselves again? So we wanted to set products that were both discreet and comfortable, but also performed really well. And we realised that breast pads were completely undeveloped as part of the category, and so we wanted to invent a better breast pad. That was kind of the premise. Could we deliver something which was better performance than the market leaders at the time, but also offer something which was very, very different? And we worked out that if we had breast pads of different sizes, and left and right, it would then fit the woman better, and if it fits the woman better, it would perform better. And that's probably true in any industry. Fits better, it works better. At every single stage of that program, we met barriers from every single stakeholder, whether it's our own team, our peers, or our external parties. And it's really important to understand they weren't people who were saying no because they weren't nice people. There were people who do want innovation, but naturally were resistant to change. So we had to persuade people at every single stage that our idea and the product that we were developing was worth them investing their time and money and effort in developing. So the first challenge was convincing people that different sizes worked, and we were literally told, well, surely different size women don't have different leakage, don't have different issues. So we had to prove that. And the way we overcame that barrier was by producing prototypes. First, handmade, almost like paper prototypes, which we asked volunteers to try within our office, and then with consumers, and then with technical testing as well. So we could overcome the first barrier by having some proof and prototype proof. The second barrier we had was, how do you get it made? So when we started asking for quotations from our suppliers, we were told, we can't quote on this because no one has ever asked for this before. That's innovation. Of course no one's ever asked for it before. But that's a classic barrier. We don't know, they don't know how to answer our questions. So we had to do and learn a bit about the manufacturing process to persuade them that it was manufacturable. We also had to pivot a bit on the design to make it easier to make for them as well. And some of that is we pivoted on the design, some of it is we pivoted on the business case. You know, we adjusted prices and how we invested to convince our stakeholders that it was worth investing. And then we started talking to our trade teams. And our trade teams did all their lovely spreadsheety work and all the analysis, and they came back and said the market size for different breast pad sizes and things is 0 because no one makes breast pads different sizes. So again, we had that barrier of how do we convince our trade teams that a new product is differentiated, will be successful in the market. We had our consumer evidence, we had our prices, and we brought that team in really early on and showed them how this can work and how it works in other categories and gave them more confidence. We also scoped the project down. We took out different variants, colours, or whatever it was, in order to make it more comfortable and digestible for them to make that happen.
I think that point you made was absolutely key, that it is when you're talking to your manufacturers, when you're talking to your internal stakeholders as well, it isn't just about saying, oh, here's a big shiny innovation, this is disruptive that's going to change the market. It is actually about compromise conversations, working out what is possible and where they can budge from their end as well, and meeting in the middle to make something happen.
Yeah, that's true. There's 2 key points there. One is the vision setting. So if your business is going in one direction, as a disruptive innovator, our job is to take you in a tangent. That's really important. But what you have to recognise is as the project develops, you get closer and closer to your core business. If you start only as an incremental innovation, you end up with a new flavour, a new variant. It's not very interesting. So it's really important that as a designer developer, you're happy to pivot and work out what's most important. We dropped a number of sizes, a number of SKUs, whatever it was. And if you look at our patent, you can see there was a whole different technology we also were very interested in, which we want to launch. So bringing it in and making it simple is really important. The other key point you made is about language. So as an innovation manager, you have to be able to talk the language of each of the different parties within your business. You can't get a scientist to talk to a marketing team. As much as we don't want our teams working in silos, they're talking different languages and they have different values behind them, and that motivates them. So an innovation manager has to be able to, if you like, sleep with all the different categories across your business or functions across your business to make that happen. So if you're going to talk to your finance person within your business, have you written a P&L first? If it's wrong, it's actually quite good because then it gives them permission and ownership and skin in the game to help you on that journey. So you don't want to do too much, but you need to at least talk that language. We know what the NPS is or what the revenue is, whatever else it is, and we've done some work on it. The same is true when we talk to the manufacturing partner. By looking at that line, we could say, if you change this, if we pay for this, could that be possible? Yes. Are there still some challenges? Yes. If you do this, well, what could we do about it to change? Well, if you change that, that will make it easier. So we're now having a conversation in their language and the technical language as well.
It goes without saying that it is important, but just reiterate, how important is it to innovation to make sure your stakeholders, and not just one of our stakeholders, we don't just mean your boss or even 2 levels above your boss, we mean every single stakeholder to the end game is involved. How important?
Oh, it's absolutely critical. I think the people are really good at it, and I didn't say, and certainly better than me, that network and talk to everybody all the time, and importantly, they're casual conversations as well. So if your only presentation to your key opinion former is a one-to-one presentation at a gate meeting, forget it, forget doing innovation, because you'll always have to pick the lowest risk projects to get through. So having that kind of relationship build up over the period of your program is critical, and getting there in casual engagement early on is really important. It's also really key to remember who those stakeholders are. So obviously there's you. You have to believe in your innovation. You have to commit yourself in innovation. There's your immediate team, your subordinates, the people who are going to be working on it. There's your line managers and your bosses. It's particularly when you're trying to something your direct reports don't necessarily think is the right solution, and you need to persuade them. Then there's the owners of the respective functions and their immediate managers beneath them. So supply chains is really a critical one for us in design and development. And your external partners, the people who you need, whether they've got technology or route to market, as part of that development process. And then obviously customers, consumers, buyers at the end as well. And having both the informal early stage conversations, having them where you're vulnerable, the child-adult kind of conversation, you're vulnerable so they can help support you, and having your ta-da presentation so that when your idea is mature enough to hand it over, it's also really important. So lots of different stages in that process, and as your innovation grows, it gets more complex, more refined. Those conversations get more mature, more robust. But don't leave it to the end. Don't show your product at your gate meeting after 2 years and expect to pass. It won't. You need to have built that engagement from the word go.
So, so thinking specifically about stakeholders, what do we actually need them to do, and what do we need from them?
Your projects and your innovation is only successful through the team you're working with. Like the really good innovators build teams to make it happen, and it's both people underneath in terms of talented engineers or marketers, whatever, and people above who can kind of be your CEOs in leadership and so on. So it's they are all stakeholders. They're all integral to how you develop your program. You need to ask the question. Well, first of all, you need to identify who they are. So, and what the role they're going to play in that project, and how important their engagement is. If you have a new technology that needs a new supply chain, then early engagement with your supply chain is going to be absolutely critical. For example, if it's a very communication-heavy project, and actually having your marketing or comms person highly engaged up front is critical. And every project is going to be different. So identifying them is really important. Then understanding what your relationship is with that person, who their personality is also key. So if you've got someone who's a very left-brain, cold, analytical person, then your approach to how you're going to handle them is going to be very different to if they're a creative, outgoing, loud person. So the classic example is if you have an innovation team sitting around the table, your designer will come in at 10 a.m. with his headphones on. He'll do half an hour of amazing piece of work, and he'll disappear off somewhere. Whereas your supply chain person's already been there since 6 a.m. and grafting away with its Excel. Those are two different cultures and two different languages, and therefore you need to approach them with different types of insight and design briefs. The type of briefs I write, the brief to the aesthetic designer is all pictures, the brief to the supply chain is all numbers. And that's not, they're not creative, that's not true. It's the type of language and culture of that stakeholder is really important. As for what we want them to do, well, we want them to help. We want them to help us get our point of difference to market. The only point of an innovation is it makes a difference, it gets there. So we want their help. So that changes the conversation. So instead of talking to a stakeholder with we've got this idea, we want to do this, this is the help that we need. We have this idea and we would like your support to do this. Whether it is financial investment, incremental investment, whether it's expertise, whether it's team, or whether it's, in the case of sort of agencies and partners, the actual piece of work that you're trying to craft. You're always asking for that kind of support. You also want them to give you permission to do stuff and empower you either to make decisions yourself or permission to go through the next gate, maybe it's a capital investment. And that's almost more of a policing role as well. It's a very important part of senior stakeholders' role is kind of to say no, just don't say it often, but it is because it helps readjust and recenter what you're doing and make more sensible decisions perhaps, or to fight back and say, actually, we disagree, we think that we need to improve this.
I think you mentioned, we were talking earlier, it was all about trust and the importance of trust when you're setting up the culture of innovation. So again, with stakeholders, how does trust balance out?
If you have built your team correctly, if your leadership team have built the team correctly, then your team should be empowered to make the decisions and have the expertise. That's absolutely critical. I think one of the things that we see in particularly the larger businesses is that decisions as the innovations progress is made at quite high level, and it's the managerial, the innovation management levels don't necessarily get empowered to make those decisions. Surely the expert in the room is the person who's used all the products. So if I think about the Tommy Tippy experience, Melissa, who led my toddler projects, she used every single one of the toddler cups. She used every competitor product. So as her stakeholder, when she had an opinion, whose opinion am I going to trust? Is it my own, or is it hers, who's used every one of the products? And likewise, when we're then putting her in front of our senior stakeholders to make decisions on the program, whose opinion are we going to trust in that room? It should be hers. So that's incredibly important. And as a leader in innovation, you have to support your team. That's not to say our stakeholders won't have opinions and have seen products that we haven't and so on, but that's very much them contributing to that process. And so trust is integral. I think the word perhaps is more important is empowerment though. So you need to empower your team to make decisions in the innovation process quickly. So is it the right technology? Why is it the right technology? Is it the right business case or price point? Why is it the right price point? That's the critical thing.
So it's interesting because you mentioned the word empower, and we've got the associations of trust, which obviously has to go both ways. And when we were talking earlier off camera, we were talking about a credit card example, to really get innovation off the ground. So share with everyone, what is empowerment?
If you think about the key things around innovation, one is your consumer, the second one is your competitors. So if you want to understand your competitor products, what do? You go and buy them. If you've got a credit card with a small limit, are you going to buy a competitor product? Probably not. If you have an unlimited credit card, you're going to go out and buy every single one of your competitor products and you're going to use it. And that sounds a bit scary because I'm going to spend £1,000 on competitor products. But I'm going to spend £100,000 of £1 million worth of business after the results of that insight that I've learned. It also allows you to make very quick decisions without necessarily having to go through a PO process or set up new suppliers, which allows you to get into prototypes very quickly. So it's a really, really easy way of unlocking the barriers to innovation, which happen as your organisation gets more mature.
So again, it's really interesting. We were talking about great in the FMCG world, but I know we've got clients watching who are from airlines, for example. So in an airline world, and how could you innovate with a credit card in an airline world?
Oh, with the credit card. Okay, so have you been on your competitor's airline? And particularly, you don't want them to know you're on the airline. So go and fly with your competitors. Don't fly with your own airline ever. Well, maybe a few times to check it out, but fly with your competitors because it's a great way of learning what the experience is. And from that, you can pick up how is their service, how smooth is their service. So we were talking about, when I was looking in Indonesia, I had to fly with Emirates. But one of the real advantages of their service was they would pick me up at home, they would take me to the airport, they would take me through the airport, and obviously the plane is very nice and all that kind of jazz, and then they would do the same at the other end. Now when you're flying to Asia and you're very stressed and you've got lots of prototypes with you, that smooth process makes a massive, massive difference. It meant I could focus on my work and I didn't have to worry about anything else. So having flown with that airline, what are the improvements that I can make to mine based off that experience? So could I pre-book an Uber for you to pick you up? So that's one less thing. I know when your flight is. By the way, your flight's been delayed by an hour. Don't worry, your Uber's going to pick you up an hour later, automatically. Well, that when you're taking your kids on a flight somewhere, that's going to instantly make you less stressful and make you enjoy that. Or it could be when you land at the other end, your taxi's already waiting. And when you get home, you've been away for a week, so you haven't got any food or milk. But don't worry, in the taxi is a little care package straight away. So instantly, you're improving services, and in this case with products and with features, but from just looking at what another competitor's done and asking how can I go one step beyond that as well.
And yeah, like you say, you've unlocked that because you put it on a credit card. You haven't had to do a huge piece of research to innovate. Because I think there's an important point as well. Obviously, we're a research agency, we're an insight agency. We talk about do it with consumers, and like you say, consumers are absolutely fundamental. But ultimately, so is understanding your world yourself through that first pair of eyes, your own eyes. You don't just have to ask other people, you've got to experience it for real, because like you say, you've got to be the advocate to your stakeholders, and there's no greater way to do that than to share your own experience.
So obviously we're talking about, you've got to empower your team, so you want your team to do that journey, and as you get more senior in your business, you still need to be in touch with those consumers. So I think it's Deliveroo, the founder of Deliveroo still goes out every month on a ride and takes orders, so he can experience the process that everyone else is going through. So how do you keep staying in touch with it? At Ooni, we cook pizzas every day. We're about to go and have lunch, and we literally cook all the time with pizzas because we want to continually understand the experience our consumers are going through. The other thing is prototyping. We'll talk more about prototyping a bit later, but you want to prototype both your physical products and your services as quickly as possible, and ideally with a lo-fi experience. And then the third one, which I advocate a lot, is pilot launches. And I've chatted with Lego about this and quite a few other businesses. Pilot launches are a prototype of the business model. You don't necessarily need real products, and we did this 10 years ago at Unilever with the Lynx Black Collection. We launched with prototype products with our students pretending to be Lynx girls with a care line which was us on a mobile phone, and we gave people a full business experience even though it was made with prototypes. Every part of that business was a prototype. And we learned about consumer behaviour, we learned how much they would spend or not spend, and whether the products would work or not, and so on. That type of prototyping you can do on a credit card. Okay, maybe you might need a few POs every now and again, but you're doing it on the cheap and on the fly. You're doing it like Christian Dorini would have done 10 years ago starting this business, and you're trying to understand and learn, is this a good idea or not? Will people buy it? Is the product about right? Is the price about right? What can I change? And we'll definitely talk more about this, but failing fast. Every single failure you learn about in that process helps inform the more disruptive and more innovative businesses. And then you can go and do it more robustly. Then you can go and do all your toilet stack-ups and your price rises, whatever else, as that project progresses in its maturity. But prototype early, fail fast.
I think it's quite important to actually share your failures with your stakeholders as well, because you're human, you're showing your vulnerability, and again, you're showing them what you've learned through your failures. And so this is the learning, so this is what we need to do, this is what we need to avoid. You've effectively set parameters. So take your Uber example with with an airline. So yes, you haven't then at that point got the full scale model where you've got a whole taxi fleet and everything, and you've got mini fridges built in. But actually, you're showing what didn't work with Uber. You're showing, well, these are the risks we now have to mitigate. This is what we've learned the hard way. Therefore, the product, the service will become better for knowing that.
Yeah. So lots of innovators talk about failing fast, and I've had some failures. So it's really, really important. The reason you build a prototype, whether it's physical, virtual, cardboard, doesn't matter, is to fail. So what you want to do is you want to know it works to this point, and this is the point where it doesn't. So a really good example of this is SpaceX and Boeing building the Falcon 9 and the Starliner. By every right, Boeing should be the market leader in building the rockets that NASA's using. They have all the expertise in aircraft and so on. There should be. SpaceX is clearly the market leader. And if you look at what they're doing with their spacecraft, they launch their rocket, it blows up, and they tell everyone about it, because you can't hide that failure. Whereas most of our businesses, we would never talk about this prototype not working. They're outwardly talking about their failures. Why? Because what they learned on that journey to that thing exploding was invaluable to their business. So the prototypes I'm building now here, or the prototypes we did at Unilever and Tommy Tippy, all about us understanding what works and where does it stop working, and what do we now need to do next, what's our next challenge. And that's true whether you're talking about digital communication, a physical product or a service. The earlier you prototype, the better. Don't spend hours on CAD building a beautiful model, build something in cardboard now. It'll take 5 minutes and then you know it's too big. The same is true with digital design and with the lo-fi kind of post-it note kind of mobile experiences. The same is true with service design on a credit card. The quicker you learn about it, the tighter you make that prototype and push that prototype to failure.
And thinking about stakeholders then, so the big challenge, getting those stakeholders on board. So how do we do it? How do we actually bring these people with all their barriers and hurdles, how do we get them thinking like us and playing and experimenting and making space rockets?
I have no idea. Like, I genuinely don't. It's one of the most difficult questions, and I think because this video isn't how to make friends and influence people. This is how do you practically convince stakeholders that innovation is brilliant.
Practical is the way forward. I love practical.
Yeah, practical. So first of all, having a physical product makes a massive difference. So we build our product here in metal very quickly, because it allows us to test products very quickly. But it also allows us to get confidence, get prices, and so on. So number one, having something physical works hugely, and people can look at it. Making sure the fidelity of that's correct as well. So too perfect, and people think it's a finished product, and they'll go negative. Too early, too lo-fi, and people won't quite understand as well. So finding that balance is important. The second is a bit of theatre. So I love theatre, so I grew up doing theatre and that kind of thing. But theatre is really important for demos and convincing people of the experience. So Daz Dorset Challenge, everyone knows that, is a really convincing demo. How do you get that kind of aha moment? So we, Unilever, were building the Live Open bed nets, which were a beautiful set of bed nets and curtains, and we were doing this in Indonesia, and we had to do two things. We had to convince salespeople and then the consumer that the product was really cool, and we had to convince our internal stakeholders that they wanted to invest in the product. So we built basically a theatre set, these beautiful things that run around in flight cases in the rainstorms in Indonesia. Don't tell health and safety about this. Which we took with us, and we assembled an Indonesian home, poor Indonesian home with a flat floor, mattresses on the floor. And we took our MDs and so on into those environments, and we took our customers and consumers into those environments and said, look, wow, doesn't your house look beautiful? Look, wow, doesn't your house is protected from insects? So the theatre was really important. We also then had data. So we had efficacy data, technical data, we had business data in terms of prices and RSPs and so on. And because we had piloted it, we had sales. So I'm standing in Indonesia with this beautiful bednet behind me, my director's just outside, and we're trying to convince the MD there to take this project from an invention to a real kind of business case. And the MD looks at us and he goes, really nice product, good presentation, great numbers, yeah. But I don't believe anyone would ever buy a bed net. I could see the blood drain from my director's face in the corner of my eye. Like, what do I say? And I said, we thought that too. We thought that too, because when we started to look, we didn't think bed nets were going to be it,
Is this because they weren't currently dominant in the market? Because
they weren't sexy. They were there and they worked really well, but no one had done any consumer development to them. No one had thought through what it meant to the consumer. They had only done it from a technology point, from a sort of charity perspective, which is classic innovation, by the way. Looking at things, the same thing through a different lens. So I said to him, I said, yeah, we thought that too when we started, but we've just sold 1,000 of them over this week on the credit card, on permission, with careful considerations of safety and things like that. But we had the evidence to convince them. And because that program had always been done piecemeal, bit by bit, because the investment had been quite small incrementally as we built it, each stakeholder as we went through that journey was willing to take us on to that next step. When we started the BedNet journey, we didn't think it was going to be the product we would be launching. We had lots of other technologies and ideas we were playing with. But we were like, this is kind of interesting. They work really well, technology. They're quite cheap, why? But consumers don't like them. Could we do something about that? Can we have a little bit of money to go and do a little experiment and design work? And then can we have a little bit of money to go and test it with some consumers? And then we're going to have a little bit more money to build some more. We used every single piece of Velcro in Europe at one point to kind of make them on a credit card. But incrementally getting to that stage where we could stand in front of an MD and eventually in front of the CEO and say, we think we've got something which we think is worth launching. Piecemeal, bit by bit, patiently, convincing them with the type of data and insight and passion and theatre that's relevant to them. If I had taken that piece of theatre to our engineering partners and gone, wow, that's amazing, look at consumer, that would have gone over their heads. So I had to talk to them in terms of how big the business was, how efficacious it might be, how many people might present, different language for that stakeholder.
So it's lunchtime now, let's go and make some pizzas. So, we've talked quite a lot about innovation, and examples you've given me in the past about how to onboard stakeholders and overcome barriers has been very much the cap example, the red hat and the green hat. So tell me more about that. Let's give those
So this is a technique I've stolen from Edward de Bono, from systematic inventive thinking, and from Stanford researchers' NABC method. And I really like it. It's really visible, and you can do it metaphorically, you can do it physically. But it's a way of changing the tonality about conversation about innovation. So ask me a question. Invite me to do something, because you like bikes, don't you? You're into your motorbike. So I
do indeed. So Ben, would you like to come on a fast motorbike ride around Scotland with me this weekend?
No, I'm a bit scared.
Heartbroken.
And I got my kids have got some stuff this weekend. But naturally, as humans, we are resistant to change. So that idea is so far out there that, of course, I'm putting my shields up, my shutters down, and I don't want to do it. And that's the kind of what we'll talk about in a moment, the red hat. What we want to is we want to be able to change the conversation. So what we do is we take the green hat first of all. So this is all the reasons why your idea is brilliant, and it's great to actually have a hat to do this, although you can do it metaphorically as well. So let's ask me the question again, and And this time I have to answer, because it's with the green hat has to answer, and it's all the reasons why I'd like to come with you on a motorbike weekend.
Fast
motorbike. Well, I like cycling, so therefore I'm probably going to like motorbiking. That might be really cool. I've never been on a motorbike or fast motorbike, so it'll be a great experience. I've been in Edinburgh, but I haven't seen most of Scotland, so that would be really cool. It means I don't have to do the stuff I have to do with my kids this weekend, which will be really nice and have a proper break. I hear the weather's great this weekend, so we're good. So all of a sudden I've got loads of really good reasons why joining you in a motorbike is going to be awesome. Okay. Now I'm going to put on the red hat. Now the red hat is not the reasons why I don't want to do it, but it's all the challenges with that. So here are the challenges. They are, well, I've already got some commitments this weekend, so I need to check with the missus to make sure I can miss them. I've booked my train, so I need to change my train. I haven't got any leathers, so could you lend me some leathers? So already now what I'm doing is, although they are challenges, because I'm so excited about the opportunity to go on your bikes, I'm already adapting a solution to that problem. Because I've been forced to use the green hat first, I'm overcoming some of my natural tendencies to resist that change. Now, if you imagine that with innovation, by forcing your stakeholders to think of all the reasons why your new super pizza oven is going to be amazing, or the great service at the airport is going to be amazing, you're already in the mindset of this is the opportunity and this is the excitement, and you're overcoming your psychological inertia or your fixedness that would normally prevent you from thinking that idea is good. And then when I put the red hat on, for you as an innovator, although I might be being negative, it's not me being negative, it's the hat. I'm being forced to critique your suggestion. But I'm naturally, because I'm excited, already beginning to overcome these what seemingly insignificant barriers. So it's a really, really simple method of helping people get out of their comfort zone and help start solving the problems that you're presented with. And you can do it in different ways. So it is great to use physical caps in workshops. It's a really powerful way of doing it, and we have done it. Or you can split your meetings. So, for example, with Christian, as we're working on our project, he has two very important roles for us. One is as an inventor and innovator, is helping us solve and create new problems. And another as a stakeholder, as CEO, as an owner, is helping us understand the challenges that we now need to overcome or change with the business. So we might separate those two meetings, and more of an invention session and more a creative session, and more of a stakeholder stage gate session as well.
I love that example, and I think it's also quite important when you're doing innovation that I think sometimes you inventor, you still need to put the red hat on as well, because you need to understand the other person's perspective. You need to think, well, what are the challenges? Unless you've seen the challenges and seen as many as you can, how do you know how to overcome them? How can you talk the language of your stakeholders to give them that nudge? Yeah,
absolutely correct. And that's really important. You are a stakeholder, remember, in your projects, particularly when something's been given to you by someone else's idea. So the first person you've got to convince is yourself. So we're working on a product where it's going to be made in metal, and it's really exciting, and it makes sense for our business. We make everything in metal, it's fine. I've come from a plastics background, so I literally had to go, right, what are the reasons why it's really good for us to work this in metal? You know, we've got a workshop with metal, we know the suppliers and stuff like that. And it totally changed my opinion. And I went, oh, actually, this is a really good idea. So you have to do that first. And then it also allows you to think about how you're going to be perceived by other people. So why would your supply chain person think it's an awesome idea? What's exciting about that for them? And what do they think the challenges are going to be in that presentation? You know, the presentation is too complex, and how could we overcome that? If I can make it a little bit simpler, if I could reduce the complexity in my project, would that then overcome it?
And what have you learned the hard way?
The word you're looking for is what mistakes have you, what failures have you had that you've learned? So we talk about failing fast. I've learned personally more from my failures and our product failures than from our successes, I think. So there's a few things. First of all, I think overcomplicating products and projects as you're going through, particularly when you're doing disruptive innovations, you want to change everything, and understanding how you can quickly simplify it down into what your, if you like, your minimum viable product is, that's acceptable, is really important. Second one is not spending enough time on the right relationships with people. So neglecting networking, particularly the informal stuff about building those relationships, and spending too much time on Excel or something like that. I think that's really important. So, and the third thing I think is not recognising when you need help. So both in terms of when you have an insight and idea, how to communicate it to those first people to get them excited. The second one on that, I think, is as you're developing the project, you need the input from other stakeholders, you need input and expertise from other people quite early on. And going in with your vulnerability and asking for help and support in an informal way is incredibly important. I think those are certainly my biggest failures. And maybe not asking stakeholders what would convince them, like really what would convince them. So when we launched the Links Black collection at Unilever as an R&D exercise, we thought we wanted to sell the 100 prototypes we had and that would be success. We never even thought about asking our stakeholders what were they looking for. They wanted it to go viral. Our entire mechanic wasn't built around that. So if we had asked that question early on, maybe we would have then scaled that project up. So I think that's really important, understanding exactly what they're really looking for. What do they really want to learn? Not just someone likes something or not, but what's going to get them to really open the pocketbook up and release the next round of funding that will allow you to get that innovation next stage.
Brilliant. I love that. And I think it is so important, isn't it? Because you can do research or you can do product development, whatever it is, but if your stakeholders don't believe in it, if you haven't convinced them, no matter what, it will not succeed. They will not let it succeed.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. The green light guy will always say no, but you can get around it. And I think one of the tips, particularly with the more disruptive innovations, is to break the rules. Rules are there to be broken. You don't do anything which is illegal or unsafe ever. That's not even negotiable. But do you need to get your boss's approval to do that piece of work? Or is there someone else in your organisation that can sidestep it and even put a little bit of peer pressure on? And that has enabled us to unlock some projects where we've gone, I don't know, a director doesn't agree with this, but the VP or the SVP wants this. That's a really powerful way of influencing people. But use it wisely. You know, if you piss your boss off, that can be career limiting. But the products and projects that have been successful are often led by people who are tenacious. You know, there's a reason Elon Musk and Steve Jobs and Henry Ford are lauded, and it's because they were assertive with their projects. Maybe a little bit too masculine, but they have led and projects through their businesses with a clear vision. As an innovation leader within your business, only you is going to affect that change, but you need to do it and bring your stakeholders on board throughout that journey to make it real. But sometimes don't listen to what they say. Sometimes find other people to get around that.
Obviously, we've got a very, very broad audience today. I know we were looking at the attendees from previous sessions. I know we've got a similar sign-up, so we've got a lot of people to satisfy. So lots of different sectors in there. And thinking about this very cross-sector market then, in terms of innovation and your ultimate top tips or top tip, what is the single most important thing they need to do to start overcoming those barriers into innovation?
Okay, number one is understand your consumer. Like, there is nothing more important than knowing who you're talking to and having met them, spoken with them, empathized with them, whatever it does to make you understand who that person is, because you're going to represent that group of people through your business. You'll be representing women to men, you'll be representing rich people to middle class 20-year-olds. Like, you have to absolutely empathize with the consumer. If you don't do that bit correctly up front, it doesn't matter what happens in the rest. So that's the number one tip. Number two, bring people on board. Get the right people in your team, in your mix. And they don't have to be people within your organisation, they can be external people, but find the right experts, the right personalities to make it happen. People you like working with who you can bring on that journey together. That's absolutely critical. And if you can't work with people who don't share that vision, if you can't bring them on board, then you need to find other people. So those are the first two big things. Understand what your competitors are doing, what's going on in the market. That's use your competitor products, stay at competitors' hotels, fly their planes, cook their products. Ask for help. I don't ask for help often enough. It's my biggest flaw. I think I can do it myself. You can't get your innovators to market if you don't get help from other people who have expertise or wisdom or passion to share. And and prototype to fail as often as you possibly can. We've just cooked lunch together with pizzas. Everyone in that room was cooking different pizzas and experimenting different things and learning about our products and about how they work or don't work. When we prototype until the point that prototype's found. And whether it's a business model or a service or a product, prototype and test as much and as often as you can. If you've only got one consumer test in your entire 4-year portfolio, you're only going to design it for success, which means you're not going to take enough risk, and so your competitors will give you a better product and you will be out of business. So prototype for fail. And perhaps the last one is the most important, is that think carefully about the language that you use throughout your process. We are going on the journey. It's not my idea, it's our idea. When you talk to each of your stakeholders, understand, are they an introvert, analytical person, in which case you need to come with numbers and spreadsheets and structure. If they're creative designers or marketeers, you need videos and tactile and images. And you need to be able to speak the language. If you don't have an innovation manager role within your business, you need to work out who it is who's doing that translation and talking, networking between each of your organisation. It's not a project manager. They're the one who's making sure the projects get delivered. That's a different skill. It's not your marketeer because they're focused on marketing and brand. It's not your R&D person because they're a scientist. It's the person who can sleep around the business and network and translate things between different bits of your organisation in a way that can convince your stakeholders in your business to invest. And when you find those people, hold on to them because they're really precious to train and work. They're great. So, but those are my tips: consumer, competitors, team, prototype to fail, and the language for those relevant stakeholders.
So thank you so much, Ben, today, as ever, for teaching me a lot and teaching hopefully everybody else a lot as well. It's been an incredible experience. Always learning a lot from you. I just want to say I think it is brilliant to be at Ooni as well, and to people watching, if you don't have a Ooni pizza oven, please do get one. It is absolutely delicious thing. I've never had one before, so just beautiful. But I think one of the big takeouts for me today is that you're not just talking innovation today. As a company, you are living and breathing it. And just a sort of example of what I experienced at lunchtime, to be taken into a sort of a working kitchen, the lunchtime kitchen, to be surrounded by 20, 30 people who are all experimenting with different flavours, types, pizza bases, there's different ovens everywhere. And they're living and breathing it, they're talking about it, they're competing with each other, they're creating new things, and they're trying and experimenting from scratch. It was a brilliant experience of how and why innovation happens.
It's all about the culture. This business has been successful because of the culture established by Bruno and Christian, and you saw that at lunchtime. Our team coming together, experimenting and testing different pizzas, which they then ate, and as you say, competing against each other to try and find different ways of testing different things. Today was the first time I had a Detroit pizza, and then the head of marketing comes over and explains how we could have made that better, how we could make it more like an authentic Detroit pizza. And that's what every day is like. You don't have to eat pizza every day, but it helps. And we have a really talented, fun team, and we are actively looking for new people. I think there's like 40 job roles out at the moment because we want great people to join us and help people make pizza.
Brilliant, but thank you so much, and we'll go now to the live questions.
Pleasure.
So thank you so much for that, Ben. Absolutely, I love your passion. Obviously, I love sort of working with you, but the passion for this. So someone's asking about live recording, and I think we can obviously sort that out, and we'll talk about that with order. So we've got Tandy Nicole saying, any strategic pointers on how to influence your stakeholders to have confidence in your decision as a product owner, product analyst, because trust is a two-way process.
Yeah, I love this question. So first, obviously, building up a relationship with your stakeholders is really important over time. So trust and believe in your professional, skills and experience. That's critical. I think I mentioned in the video about vulnerability. So when you're coming to a decision, are they involved in the method that's going to help make that decision first? So in design, we have something called a concept selection criteria, where we work out how we're going to make a decision for different routes. That's almost like our tool to make that decision process, and involving the stakeholder in the decision criteria means that when you get to the point later in the program you're making a decision, they've kind of already signed it off. The other part is to show you're working. So this is what we learned. This is the alternatives or the other routes that we could do. And this is why we've come to, or why I have come to this decision, or we have come to that decision. So I think that's really important. But the biggest thing I think for it is that long-term relationship. So you've got to build up that level of trust, and you can only do that through success and showing your failures. Remember, show your failures as well over a period of time, so that the business relies on the expertise within itself rather than kind of questioning all the time.
Brilliant, and thank you so much for that. And we'll say Ben is open for questions on LinkedIn as well, so if you do want to get in touch, I mean, that's one of the huge values and benefits of Aura, that you can network and share ideas as well. So we've got a question from Jonathan Millian. So it's about patents, and you mentioned patents. So is protecting ideas and new solutions the responsibility of the innovation team, and how do you protect your IP? So yes, how do you protect your IP?
That's a good question. So obviously I come from a design background, so you want to patent things because the idea, the inventive step that you've done is both a competitive advantage, and it's also it's almost like rewarding. You sort of go, oh, I've got a patent. So yeah, it's definitely part of the innovation team's responsibility to do that. You need, when you look at your competitor set, you have to look at that patent landscape as well to understand both, can you do something better, but also is there territory that you can't kind of go in. How do you do it? Well, there are great patent lawyers out there, but it's actually relatively easy to kind of go, this is my inventive set, this is what we've done that's different, here's the drawing, here's the technical solution that we've kind of established, and then work with your IP team, whether it's internal or external, to then actually do the legwork. Don't get your internal design team to be writing patents. Get an expert to do it. The language they use, talked about language a lot, the language they use is very specific. But you need to be clear as what your inventive stuff is, what your ideas, and how it's differentiated from your competitors, and what the benefit is to whether it's the business or the technology or the consumer itself. So.
Brilliant, thank you. And final questions for me before I hand back to Tom. Who has been the most influential person, person or object or book or process? What has been most influential on you over the years as an innovator?
Do you know, I don't think there's been one individual. I think the thing about being an innovator is you're always hungry for new innovation and insight. You're always talking to other people. I mean, that's why we're in this network together. So, you know, I've read Katie Christian's Innovator's Dilemma and went, oh my God, that's genius. I've met people who've done great innovation. I've talked to Lego, we've talked to, you know, lots of other business and networks and things, and every single conversation, you pick a little nugget up and it goes into your backpack. So I don't think there is a hero. I think there's lots of people who have influenced me and our businesses on those journeys, and that's how I'd certainly like to continue. So read lots, read everything, be curious, ask why all the time, and ask how other people are doing it, because you will learn from something from them, definitely.
Brilliant, and thank you so much for joining us today, Ben. So I'll hand over for Tom to wrap up, but thank you again, and we will talk to you soon.
Pleasure, thanks guys.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Hannah. Goodness me, wow. From where did the time go? No idea. It just skipped away from us. Where are we at? It's 10:58. I know most people will now be dashing to a 10 o'clock meeting. Lovely session. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Let me just quickly talk about what's coming up. We have the final session in the Masterclass series next week. That's going to be Ross Atribus of Live Golf Investments, who will be discussing using insight to drive innovative change. And he'll be discussing that again with Hannah. On the 23rd of June, so next Thursday, we have Verve presenting on culture and trends, shining a light on cultural shadows. And then on the 29th of June, we're going to have the Aura Innovation of the Year Award. Now, this is going to be a 2-hour session from 9 till 11. And at this session, you'll hear 6 finalists from the bumper crop of entries that we received for this year's Innovation Award. So please do block out time in your diary to join us for that. And then it would really be remiss of me if I didn't mention that we're going to be at the RAF Club on the 14th of July for the Aura Insight Impact Award finalist sessions. So join us at the RAF Club daytime. And then in the evening, it's the biggest event of the year. It's the Auras at the Kia Oval. So please do join us for that. You can sign up on Eventbrite. So please go to the Aura website and you'll see all of these upcoming events on the site. Sign up for some or all of them. It would be great to have you in our company again. So we come to the end of the third get the words out, Tom. And so we come to the end of the third broadcast in the Innovation Masterclass series. I thoroughly enjoyed it. What a belter it's been. That's it for today. Thank you to Ben Diamant, of Ooni Pizza Ovens for being with us this morning, and to Hannah of Blue Yonder Research for facilitating the discussion. This is Tom Kerr saying goodbye from your team here at Aura. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.